Years ago, I preached in Erlanger, Kentucky. Erlanger, Kentucky is a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio. And while I was there, I had the opportunity one day to set up a booth during freshman orientation week at Cincinnati Christian University. Among the materials I prepared was a little tongue-in-cheek brochure that I entitled Top 10 Reasons to Come to the Erlanger Church of Christ. And one of the reasons I gave was a warm welcome even if you aren't in Come Alive. Now, Come Alive is a select student music group at the school, and by poking fun at the elitist attitude of some of those who were part of that program, I was trying to tell the students that everyone was welcome regardless of who they are. And I had a good reaction that day to the materials, but a few days later I got an email from a student who was upset. You see, someone had apparently posted my brochure on a bulletin board in the hallway by the cafeteria, and he was offended by that one line about Come Alive. He defended the program as important and did not like my portrayal of the group as anything less than good. The email really irritated me because he was actually confirming what I was poking fun of. So I sat down to respond to his email, and I wrote, "Lighten up. I know Come Alive is a good ministry. I also know that it's only a program set up by men and women and not by God. And because it is a program set up by men and women, it is not perfect. Don't make more of the program than it really is. The statement was meant as a joke and should be seen only in that light. If we as Christians cannot enjoy ourselves and have fun, then we will indeed have a very dull life." I paused then in my writing and began to think about examples of the arrogance of some of those who have been in Come Alive over the years, especially when I was in school. I was going to rip apart this self-righteous kid's attempt to tell me what is right and wrong. But before I could do that, I just happened to read Romans chapter 14, verse 1. Romans chapter 14, verse 1 says, "Accept him whose faith is weak, without passing judgment on disputable matters." I hate when that happens. So I deleted what I had written, and instead I simply sent this simple email. I said, "If the brochure offends you, you have my permission to take it down and dispose of it. I was not even aware that it had been posted." Romans chapter 14 talks about a missing attitude in the church and among many Christians in general today. It's the attitude of tolerance. Now, I know that that word is overused today, and it's often misused by people just to get their own way. However, I'm not talking here about what others do or want, but about what we do. You see, we have become so self-centered in our world, and in turn so self-centered at church, that we always think, well, what's in it for me? And Paul is telling us here that church is not about what we want, but about meeting the needs of other people. And not only tolerating, but loving the weaker brother or sister. Specifically in Romans chapter 14, Paul is talking about eating certain foods that were sacrificed to idols. Now, there is no doubt that Paul understood that it really did not make any difference if you ate meat sacrificed to idols or not. And from our perspective in the 21st century, we can see that the whole argument was really pretty silly and petty. It was just meat. We read this chapter and sometimes we can shake our heads wondering how the church in Rome got so bogged down over something so unimportant. But I wonder, do we do the same thing? What's interesting is Paul has been telling us since Romans chapter 12 about our good works. Remember that we are saved by grace through faith in baptism for good works. And the good works Paul has been citing are not a list of things we cannot do, but a lifestyle we should live. We do good works not to be saved, but because we are saved, we do good works. And our good works are seen by our attitude. Now, Paul has been emphasizing how we show our good works by being loving, peaceful, and submissive to those in the world around us. Now in chapter 14, he deals with our attitude in church and with other Christians. And that's important because, kids do that all the time. They will be one way when they're out in public. They'll be polite, they'll be good, they'll behave themselves. Get them at home, and they're a holy terror, right? And we do that at church sometimes too. We know how to be good and proper in the world, but get us in the building here, and it becomes a free-for-all sometimes, right? Romans chapter 14, verses 13 and 14, is a summary of what Paul is trying to teach us today. Look at those verses. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in your brother's way. As one who is in the Lord Jesus, I am fully convinced that no food is unclean in itself. But if anyone regards something as unclean, then for him it is unclean. Now, I love the phrase, which is the title of my sermon, sacred cows make great hamburgers. I did a little research on that phrase and where the phrase came from, and found there are a lot of variations on the phrase from a lot of different people, but most believe it stems from the 1960s counterculture that questioned everything and turned everything upside down. In other words, what you hold dear really means nothing, is what it says. I actually first read it in a textbook I had for a science class in Bible college. The textbook was called Science is Not a Sacred Cow. Obviously, the idea of sacred cows making great hamburgers is the opposite of what Paul was trying to teach us in our text. Yes, the cow is not really sacred, so it doesn't matter if we make hamburgers out of her, but that is not the point. The point is, how does turning a sacred cow into a Big Mac affect our relationship with our brothers and sisters? Well, first, we are to respect others. Respect others. Look at verse 1 again. Accept him whose faith is weak, without passing judgment on disputable matters. William Barclay wrote, no man remains unwounded when that which he thinks precious is laughed at. It is no small sin to laugh at another man's beliefs. To us, it may seem to be prejudices rather than beliefs. That does not matter. No man has a right to laugh at that which some other man holds sacred. The styrofoam cross that hung on the wall in the sanctuary of the Windsor Road Christian Church looked realistic. I don't know how many times I accidentally bumped into it, and I was surprised that it did not hurt like you would think a wooden cross would hurt if you bumped into it. Well, one day we built a large fellowship hall in the building, and when I was there, and at Christmas we planned to do this big musical in that hall. We needed a cross for the production, so I moved the styrofoam one upstairs to the fellowship hall. Well, after the play was over, I decided to keep the cross upstairs because all the walls were bare, and I thought that would be a nice thing to use to begin to decorate the walls. Well, you would have thought that the unpardonable sin had been committed. Complaints came by side of roll call cards, by letters, by phone messages, and being stubborn, at first I refused to put the cross back downstairs. And I began to make fun of those who said they wanted it back, calling them traditionalists and narrow-minded. After all, it was just a styrofoam cross. It wasn't even real wood. It was just a symbol. It really meant nothing in the vast scheme of things. Finally, the church secretary, who had been there since the beginning of that congregation, told me this. She said, for some in the congregation, that cross is a symbol of our struggle. That cross was with the church when we first began and met in the movie theater. It was put up front every week to remind us who we serve. Now, it's a reminder to those of us who were there where we have come from. Now, you see, it was still just a silly styrofoam cross. I don't think that is even there at the church anymore. But I was not showing respect for how others felt. The cross not a matter of salvation, but it meant something to the charter members. We show respect by honoring other people's perspectives. A person's views, of course, are his own, and we are to respect that. Next, we are to accept others. Romans chapter 14, verses 2 through 4. One man's faith allows him to eat everything, but another man whose faith is weak eats only vegetables. The man who eats everything must not look down on him who does not, and the man who does not eat everything must not condemn the man who does, for God has accepted him. Who are you to judge someone else's servant? To his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand. Paul is reminding us here that we are God's servants, and therefore we are answerable to God, not to anyone else. It really doesn't matter what I think about what you're doing. That's between you and God. However, notice I'm not talking about matters of salvation or essentials. Rather, I'm talking about that very long list we keep sometimes, which are nothing more than matters of opinion. Things like the length of your hair, or if you wear a suit to church, or if you like the old hymns or the new songs. All those things the churches fight over, but mean very little. Years ago, I had a dog named Shady. Shady was part bird dog, and my uncle said that she would make a great hunting dog, but you see, I don't hunt, and that's not why I had Shady. So I did not need for her to learn how to track birds or squirrels. My uncle said that was a waste of a good dog. And to my uncle, who was a hunter, and maybe if you're a hunter, the same to you as well, but to me, I did not have Shady to hunt. I had Shady to be my pet. And although she was a little hyper and excitable, as bird dogs often are, she was still a good pet. The bottom line, you see, was Shady was answerable to me, not my uncle. So it really did not matter if she could hunt or not. We are answerable to God, not other people. So it really doesn't matter what others think we can or cannot do. It only matters what God thinks we should do. Beginning with verse 5. One man considers one day more sacred than another. Another man considers every day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. He who regards one day as special does so to the Lord. He who eats meat eats to the Lord and gives thanks to God. And he who abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself alone, and none of us dies to himself alone. If we live to the Lord. And if we die to the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. You then, why do you judge your brothers? Or why do you look down on your brother? For we will all stand before God's judgment seat. It is written, as surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me, every tongue confess to God. So then, each of us will give an account of himself to God. The Cleveland brothers were typical boys. They fought with each other. They brought frogs home to their mother. They were often dirty and would tear their clothes when they played. Now, honestly, I did not know those boys all that well. I was a preacher at the church, but I spent most of my time making hospital calls and dealing with other adult issues. The only way I could have known them very well would have been if they came to youth group, but they did not. They came every Sunday morning, but they did not come to Sunday school, they did not come to youth group. The most interaction I had was really to say hi to them on Sunday morning. Well, one night, the adult Sunday school class had a party at the Cleveland's home, and they ran out of ice. And I volunteered to go get some more, and the Cleveland boys all begged to go with me. Well, since this was in the days before I had kids, I got and took them along. And as we drove to the store, all three boys were talking at once. I had the radio on, and I was actually trying to listen to the radio, but suddenly, the oldest boy said, "We like going places with you. You know why? Because you're the only adult we know that really listens to what we have to say." Now, I felt a little embarrassed because I had no idea what they've been talking about. But because I wasn't correcting them or telling them how to do something or yelling at them, they thought I was listening. Now, there's a little more to accepting others than simply not correcting them. We need to listen, but think how different things would be if instead of demanding our way, we accept the differences in others. Again, there are essentials that we cannot ignore, but so much are just matters of opinion. And opinions differ. Do we know the difference? It's not our job, you see, to be the judge. It's our job to love as Jesus loved. Finally, we are to fellowship with others. Fellowship with others. Romans chapter 14, verse 19. Let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. The problem with Romans chapter 14 is that we often use it to get our own way, don't we? But Paul's point is not to demand someone conforms to our ways because we are offended by how they do something. Our society has become that way too, and they become very offended at every little thing you can imagine. If you say you don't like the way something is done, and they'll try to make you stop, unless of course what they are doing can hurt them. Then we have missed the point of this whole chapter. It's not about making others fall in line. Not about us doing everything, but rather it's about us doing everything we can to live in peace with others. When I arrived in Charleston, Illinois in March of 2000, Central Christian Church was in the middle of a struggle over their worship style. People were upset, they were taking sides, and it was causing a split in the church. So on May 6, 2001, I tried to remedy the situation by offering two worship services. One with a traditional style of worship, and the other with a more contemporary flair. And the attention at church disappeared almost immediately. And we experienced some growth. But you see, the problem was we had the traditional service was at 8 o'clock, and the contemporary service was at 10:30, and sandwiched in between was Sunday school. So there'd be people from both services coming to Sunday school. And as they would do that, they began to feel an emptiness inside. That something wasn't right. They'd been to church, but they felt they were missing people. They saw them in Sunday school, but they weren't able to worship with them. What was happening was we were becoming two separate churches. And instead of joy and happiness, sadness began to prevail over worship. I believe it was important for us at the time to go to two services because by separating, it forced people to realize what was really important. Everyone realized they missed seeing everybody, so a year later, we returned to one service. Here's what's amazing. The first Sunday back with one service was larger than the two separate services combined. And the church began to grow. And we never again had a problem with what kind of music we're going to sing. And we did a little bit of both. You see, who really cares what kind of songs we sing? We need a fellowship of each other. And the goal of fellowship is to love one another. Look at Romans chapter 14, verse 15. If your brother is distressed because of what you eat, you are no longer acting in love. Do not by your eating destroy your brother for whom Christ died. You see, the only thing that's really important is Jesus Christ. Everything else is secondary. Do you want to be responsible for the loss of a soul because you are free to do things the way you want? Do you want to abort the young Christian because of your opinion? Verse 22. So whatever you believe about these things, keep between yourself and God. Blessed is the man who does not condemn himself by what he approves. The idea of not offending others by our actions is fairly simple. It is one that most of us have heard before. The chapter does not give us a license to condemn other people's actions. We cannot say because of this chapter, you can't say, you should not eat meat because it might offend sister so-and-so. Nor can we say, if you're going to dress like that, don't come to church. Rather, Paul is telling us to examine ourselves. Examine ourselves. He's assuming we're the mature ones here. So we need to examine ourselves. Because it doesn't really matter what everyone else is doing. What matters is what are you doing. Most things in this life that we consider so important really aren't. Only one thing is worth our time and effort, and that is Jesus Christ.